This is my little talk, so it should take about 20 minutes, and we'll do questions and answers afterwards. So um, let me introduce myself first. So I am a AI architect and a strategist, and so I help businesses to implement AI, so make AI real in their business. And I have been working in the consulting business for, gosh, more years than I like to count. And recently, I was with McKinsey for 5 years, and I also did some work at the Federal Reserve Bank. And I recently won an award for AI and the most technologically advanced and interesting solution in an AI hackathon for multi-agentic solutions. So enough about me. We'll get to the main topic. So, what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about, first of all, we're going to talk about the value of AI. What's the value that you can get from AI? And so there's risks and challenges associated with that as well. So you can spend a lot of time, you can spend a lot of effort, a lot of money on AI, and you want to avoid those risks, and you want to kind of know what the challenges are before you start diving in and spending money. And then we're going to talk about the business impacts of AI. So what are the impacts going to be on your business when you bring AI in? What are the things you can expect when you integrate AI into your business? And then we're going to talk about building AI value. So how do you do it? And it's incremental. It's not something where you just turn it on and all of a sudden it's magic and it just solves everything. And then we're going to go through a use case. So I'm going to show you how we put together an inventory for our boat. And it'll work. It'll work for a business or any other kind of a small situation where you want to put together an inventory and put it into a spreadsheet. And we're going to talk about a couple other things too. We're going to talk about things like unknown unknowns and known unknowns and things of that nature when we get to talking about prompts. So, first of all, businesses are just realizing huge amounts of value from AI. And so, AI, it's going to reshape 50% of jobs, half the jobs just right out of the gate. It's going to change them completely. And 92% of businesses said they're going to spend more money on AI. So it's here to stay. The genie's out of the bottle. You can't avoid it any longer. And the thing is businesses that um, implement frameworks and give it a lot of forethought and apply some critical thinking before they start spending money on it and charging into it, they're the ones that are going to realize even more value. So, businesses that do that and put in frameworks and governance and things like that realize value like 20% more than the folks that are just using AI without that. So, some of the things that you got to think about is there's just new roles. Even if you're just a small business owner, there's just new things that you have to think about when you're using AI, new responsibilities, new assurances, and things like that. And especially if you're in healthcare, things like that. And then also just any business where you're have revenue and you have costs and things like that, you want to make sure that AI is not flying the plane, right? Because you don't want to get like a bank statement that shows a negative amount at the end of the month when you're expecting a big positive or something like that. So don't let AI fly the plane. There's security risks too, right? Because you start going down, hey, there's this neat thing that helps me with this and helps me with that, right? Well, without like thinking about those types of things and understanding what it's doing, there's a security risk because you start letting the AI do things on your computer. Oh, well, go connect to this system I have and connect to that system and connect these things together. And sometimes those can have nefarious pieces of software in there as well that might be phoning home and sending your credit card information back or who knows what. Once you give it access to your hard drive, if you downloaded these different things, really long story short, there's just make sure that you trust the source of whatever you're downloading and putting on your computer. No different than what you should be doing now anyway. And then additional automation controls, things like that. You just really need to be thinking about, what can happen if this just goes, haywire, right? So, and it's just all about doing things incrementally, thinking about it critically, doing a bit of research, and don't just download something and start clicking on things and hope for the best. So there's different levels of impact too that you can get from AI. And so you can use it as a chat bot, and that's going to be a little bit lower risk. It's, that's like your chat GPT, that's like your LeChat, things like that, and Claude chat. And people are going to realize about a 10% increase. So, acceleration in your task that you're trying to do in your thinking, oh wow, that saved me some time, and so you're going to see really about a 10% value from that. And then other things that you can use, there's like GitHub Copilot, there's PowerPoint, Word Copilot, email copilots help you write emails. When you start getting into that territory, um, That's like a 20% increase. And there's kind of an analogy here too. So if you're looking at a chatbot's kind of like a GPS. It can give you a map of how to get there, right? And GPS in your car. Uh, Copilot is kind of like cruise control, right? It'll help you maintain course and speed, but you still got to keep the car in the lane. You still got to drive the car, right? The next level where people are seeing value is in AI embedded applications. So applications that take advantage of AI for a specific purpose to do something better than it did before. And so, one of the things is like, potentially like site reliability engineering, right? Which is, kind of a complex term, but basically that's a person who makes sure that websites stay up all the time, right? And so they're looking for problems and things to take a website down. So using automation, right? Rather than having to go sift through logs and look for anomalies and figure out what to do, AI can really help those types of processes because it can accelerate things. I was talking to somebody about, doing like an inventory application with a point of sale system and kind of connecting things up. And, that would be another good use case of that, putting together an application or a number of prompts into loops that made an entire application that really automated a whole process or accelerated a particular process or made a particular process easier. And so those kind of people that do those types of things are seeing up to a 40% increase in value. And then where the rubber really meets the road is multi-agent. And so in multiple agents, think of it like a whole bunch of chatbots that are getting together. And you start off with one chatbot, and this chatbot says, I need another chatbot to do this, and I need another one to do this. And then they all get together and they start talking to each other. Really, that's kind of what a multi-agent system is. And so that really is where you can get to like the full self-driving car. You still got to have somebody behind the wheel, right? You don't want to let it fly the plane, but then those multi-agentic types of things can really do a lot. And if you're using something like Claude Cowork, right, or Claude Code or something like that, you'll actually see it doing that when we do the demo. You'll see it saying, oh, I'm going to do this task, and it'll start to fire off agents, and it'll write little programs that'll do tasks for us. So let's talk about building value, right? So getting to the incremental part, right? And so there's just some different things, and there's some promises and some impacts that can happen. So if we're looking at reducing cost, right? That's a promise of AI, right? But the cost of value sometimes isn't clear, right? You can't just say, if I'm going to do A, right, how much money am I going to save or how much more money am I going to make? Well, that's having some robust reporting. So if you're going to go say, do something with Claude, just make sure that you're getting the reports that are showing you based on what you're using, how much are you paying? And the business impact there is that's going to maximize the amount of money that you spend and the value that you get back. Accelerating your processes, another promise of AI. Well, a human in the loop can slow down the process. So if you're using AI and, somebody gave me an example the other day, they said, well, I generate AI and it generates like 100 pages. And the problem is they didn't constrain it enough. They didn't, and it wasn't the right task. So if you're not doing the right thing with it, you're not prompting it the right way, it can actually take longer to do things with AI because it generates so much stuff that you have to go through and you got to validate everything. I mean, that's the whole thing is validation is always mandatory. Don't let it fly the plane. You got to have a human in the loop. And accountability tools and things like that can help with that so that as the AI is generating and spitting things out, just using different tools. I like to use GitHub, for example, but that's a whole nother GitHub. That's a whole nother topic. Yeah. GitHub. It's like the point being is when something comes out, right, is the pain point is you want to make sure it gets reviewed by a human. And a lot of times what happens is a human will say, oh, well, that was easy and it kind of looks good and just look at it from an overview perspective, but not really read through it. And then stuff slips through the cracks and they call that AI slop, right? Because you really haven't validated what's come out of the AI and it's just critical. And so, and I like to think of it more as a thought partner and a generation of ideas and helping me fill in the gaps, but not letting it fly the plane. It can also start, by writing code, but I don't want it to write a whole thing. I want it to write small pieces because I want to make sure that it's going to organize things together. And AI is getting better and better at that. But anyway, human in the loop, right? And that improves your quality of output. Make sure you have accountability, right? You don't want stuff slipping through and getting out into production that people haven't looked at. Automation, another promise. But you want to automate tasks, not people. right? That's the thing, right? Is you're not automating people, you're automating particular tasks. How do you do that? You don't just prompt it, you get a prompt or a series of prompts or a series of agents and you put them together and you give them a prompt and you say, here's my prompt. Like the inventory example would be a good one. You could just give it a prompt and say, hey, go contact my inventory system, and then take the numbers out of that and put it together with a spreadsheet from my sales system and come up with a recommended order quantity spreadsheet, right? You could have maybe a loop or a couple of loops, but then it would come back and loop to a human and give you some kind of output. And then from that output, you could take it and hand it to another loop that said, oh, well, contact the supplier and identify the things that come from him and order those things and send him an email and order it. So it's automating tasks, not people, right? And so that's what you got to think. What are the use cases that I can do that are going to save me time and not cause me more time to use AI with? So then problem solving, right? And here's the thing, right, is you want to break your problems down into components. AI training, it can enable, optimal usage and improve output. So people that you have that you want to use AI, make sure that they get the training, that you get the training just on whatever is the latest and the training on the tool that you're using. And your staff's upskilled, it provides additional value. Um, Last thing is just, people can innovate and you want to send people off and go say, try these new things. Just make sure that you've got some kind of governance in place, right? So you have some governance that's not going to let them run wild. And then all of a sudden you get a bill from the AI company at the end of the month for $10,000. You go, wait. So make sure those controls are in place so that it'll only spend so much money over so much time. There are things that you can put in there that just say, hey, I'm at this tier, and once you get to $50, that's all we're spending this month. So make sure that those types of controls are in place. And then you want just a governance framework to mitigate your security and your cost risks as well. So you want to prevent people from downloading things and just installing them willy-nilly on your PCs just because it's a cool tool that works with AI. You don't want to do that, right? Because that could impact your security risk. So just and really just easy to understand guidelines that you communicate clearly with the people that you're working with. That goes a long way. And just checking in with them regularly on that. And, it doesn't even have to be a big fancy technology solution. So this is where we're going to get to our demo now. And this is just a generic prompt. And I use this prompt for different things a lot. And this can apply to just about any business, right? So first we say, I'm creating an inventory for a insert use case here, right? I'm creating an inventory for a small business. I'm creating an inventory for my bike shop, whatever the case may be, right? I want a spreadsheet I can use to track that inventory. And I want output in, pick a format, Excel, Open Office, things like that. Ask questions needed for clarification. Now, this is an important one, right? I include this with almost every prompt. It asks for unknown unknowns. So it's saying, go and ask me any questions that maybe I haven't thought of that you need to ask me to clarify what I'm asking you to do. And that's a really important one. And especially with like Claude, like we'll see in the demo, it'll ask us a couple questions based on what we're doing. And then now here's one where I'm asking it for unknown knowns, right? I know I want categories and I know I want columns, right? But I'm saying, well, which ones didn't I think of? And so that's the next thing here where I say recommend additional categories or columns that would be useful given my use case up there. And then important columns are, right? And I'm going to say, here's the columns I already know about. These are my known knowns, right? This is what I want you to do. I want you to have at least these columns, right? So I've told it output. I've told it what I want it to do. So now let's look at that use case with the data filled in, right? For my boat use case, I'm saying I'm creating inventory for my Hunter 290 sailboat with a Yanmar 2GM20F 18 horsepower diesel engine, right? So I'm being very specific. And then I want the spreadsheet, and this is from the prompt before, and the output in quoted CSV format. So I'm being very specific about that. And any questions, recommend additional categories or columns would be useful. Here's my important columns, right? So by using these dashes, I'm making a list and then I'm adding additional context. So I'm saying an item that describes the item, example, fuel filter, manufacturing part number. I want a quantity. I want the location on the boat, and I want categories. And here's some example categories that I've given it. So now I'm going to switch to the demo now, and we'll watch this kind of walk through here, and I'll explain it as this goes. So what's going to happen here, and we'll make this, I'll make this full screen here. There we go. So this is Claude, and I'm using Claude Cowork, as you can see in the upper left there. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a project. And the nice thing about Cowork is it can work on files and folders. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from scratch, and I'm going to choose a new folder, but you can use an existing folder that already has a bunch of files in. I'm going to give it a name, right? And I'm just going to call it Bodie because that's what we call our boat, Bodie. And then I'm going to give it some instructions. And these can be instructions it'll remember every time you bring up this project. And it'll write them to a file called claude.md. And those are your instructions. So as your project progresses and you want it to remember things across invocations, you put them in these instructions that get written to your claude.md file. And then when it comes up, it'll read that in and send that with every prompt. And so here again, I've got my project location, I've got my instructions. And now we're going to create our project. Now, one of the interesting things to note about this is that now that I'm in my project, I can choose what model to use. And there's going to be different levels of models, like Opus 4.8. That's currently the highest level model. Fable 5 was one they just came out with, and it's got some limited availability, but that's their brand spanking new model. And then as we get down to Haiku and Sonnet, all of those models are fitted to the complexity of the task. So like Haiku is the fastest for quick answers, but it's not good at complex problems. Opus, on the other hand, is good at complex problems. And then for each model, I can tell it how much effort I want you to take. So I want you to take a little bit longer time. And so what I've got is I've got the Opus 4.8 model here, and I've got it on high effort. So I'm telling it, I want you to spend a good amount of time on this. And now I'm going to send the prompt. And if you look over here on the right, as it's preparing the session, you'll see in progress. Now, this is the point where it's working on it, and it's going to fire off those agents that we were talking about. So as it says thinking, it says first it's going to ask me some questions, right? So it's going to fire off an agent that asks me questions. And this is just kind of automatically doing a multi-agentic approach. So I'm going to say, well, yes, of course I wanted to pre-populate common items. So any common items that would be common to a Hunter 290 with that type of engine, it's going to pre-populate those items in my inventory for me. And then I also want some other additional categories. I'd like safety and ground tackle, plumbing and sanitation, sails and canvas. I want all those categories included as well. So it's going to ask me one more question here. And it's going to ask me what extra columns do I want besides my core set? Do I want reorder notes, dates, costs? Because remember, I said suggest additional categories, suggest additional columns. It's saying, well, I just want the reorder quantities and notes, right? I don't necessarily want dates or cost or status or condition, at least at this point. And the nice thing is it's going to write this out to the directory that I specified at the beginning. So when I come up later, I can say, go get this file and go make changes to it later, because now that directory is part of my project. It's got a claude.md file. And here it goes. Now it's going off and doing things. So it's got asked me my questions. It's spitting my questions back out. And it's going through and just running some agents and figuring out what to do. And so what it will do now is it's going to write those prompts, and it's going to tell me right up here. It's saying I have what I need, building a pre-populated quoted CSV list. And we'll scroll down here, and you can see where it says it created a file. And now it's writing that file out. And so what it winds up doing is it's going through and it's figuring out the next word, right? So when you go and you send a query, it sends your blob of text up there and says, statistically speaking, what's the next word? And it keeps doing that in a loop. So every next word that's coming out, you're seeing these characters increase for every next word. And it's just creating the spreadsheet. And it's just regurgitating the patterns that match what's the next word, what's the next word, what's the next word. And it keeps adding that on. So, and then as it writes our file, right, as soon as it's done, we're going to have our spreadsheet. And it's going to also pop our spreadsheet up here on the right-hand side. And you can see also up here on the right-hand side that it's showing us too that its instructions are stored in the claude.md file. Now it's all done. It's written my inventory file for my Hunter 290. And it looks like it's finding some more tools there. And there it is. There's the inventory for my Hunter 290. And you can see that it's gone and it's pre-populated. And that's the correct, the 15W40 is the correct engine oil. That's the correct oil filter. That's the correct type of coolant that I need, and transmission fluid. So it's gone in and filled that in with all the parts that I would need. And this would have taken me hours to go and look all this stuff up, put in the manufacturer part number, and it's even got the quantities right. See, it knows that I need it knows that I need 2 quarts of that oil for my oil pan. And then it's telling me that I need zinc and what kind of rigging I need. And, it's just figured out the quantities of everything. And I am going to have to go through and validate this, but this is a good start. I mean, just right here, this has saved me hours and hours of time. So,
Hey, just wanted to say thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe and like and comment, and check us out at loopta.com, LOOPTAH.com. And they're the ones that sponsor these talks. And so we'll be doing more of these talks about AI and AI in business. And that's kind of Loopta's speciality, is it's looping to a human in business. And so check out that website. Also, check us out at analogscott.substack.com for other content. We've got some Norm's News Nuggets that just happened. Lots of fun things going on over there. Deeper reads, lots of extra content and things. Become a subscriber over there. And then lastly, go check out skipperscott.com, our floating studio. We're all about it over there, and we've got all kinds of things going on. We've got some electronic geekiness, and we're going to be putting solar panels and things like that on it. So be sure to go subscribe over there as well, because we've got just all this content going on, and Loopta's media production arm, and then we've got AI talk. So anyway, have an amazing, amazing rest of your day, and thanks for watching. I'm Analog Scott. Subscribe, like, and comment. Peace and much love from your papa.